The scent of ammonia and industrial-grade floor wax was the cologne of Elias's life. For 30 years, he had been the silent shadow navigating the opulent halls of Finch and Sterling, one of New York City's most formidable financial firms. His shift began at 6 p.m., just as the titans of industry, clad in bespoke suits, began their exodus, leaving behind a trail of discarded coffee cups and the faint, electric hum of ambition. Elias, a man whose quiet dignity was as much a part of him as the deep-set lines around his eyes, would then begin his work, restoring order to their chaotic world. He was a ghost in their machine, ensuring the gleaming surfaces reflected their success back at them each morning. Elias's world wasn't the 50-story skyscraper in Midtown, it was a cramped, third-floor walk-up in the Bronx, a home filled with the lingering scent of his late wife's favorite lavender soap and the vibrant, irrepressible energy of his twin daughters, Seraphina and Isabella. At 22, they were his everything, the twin suns around which his weary planet orbited. They had their mother's grace and a fire all their own, a flame they fed not in the hallowed halls of Juilliard, but in the cramped space between their living room sofa and the television, and in the echoing expanse of the local community center's basketball court after hours. They were dancers. Not just dancers, but storytellers whose language was movement. Their days were a patchwork of barista shifts and bookstore clerking, a hustle to pay bills and buy point shoes that would be worn through in a matter of weeks. Their nights were for their art. They would push the furniture aside, their bodies weaving intricate tales of hope and struggle, their movements a breathtaking fusion of ballet's elegant lines, contemporary's raw emotion, and the powerful, grounded rhythms of their ancestors. They were brilliant, a secret masterpiece hidden in plain sight. The talk of the office for weeks had been the annual Finch Foundation Gala. It was the crown jewel of the city's social calendar, a night where millions were raised for the arts. Elias knew it only as the event that required an extra deep clean of the grand ballroom at the Finch Tower. One evening, as he emptied a trash can in a conference room, he overheard a group of young associates, their ties loosened, their voices slick with privilege. "Can you imagine old Elias at the gala?" one snickered. "He'd probably try to polish the silverware with his sleeve." Laughter followed, sharp and cruel. Elias froze, his hand tightening on the plastic bin. He was used to being invisible, but this felt different. It was a pointed, personal dismissal of his entire existence. He said nothing, simply finished his task and moved on, the laughter echoing in his ears long after he'd left the floor. But he hadn't been the only one to hear. From the shadows of his corner office, a place he rarely left, Alistair Finch, the firm's reclusive, almost mythical billionaire founder, had watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. 2 days later, a sleek, black car, the kind that usually transported Finch himself, pulled up outside Elias's apartment building. A courier in a crisp uniform emerged, holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. Inside, embossed with the golden Finch Foundation crest, was an invitation. Not just for him, but for Elias Washington and his daughters, Seraphina and Isabella. They were invited to the Finch Foundation Gala. The invitation landed on the small kitchen table like a grenade. Elias stared at it, a maelstrom of emotions swirling within him. Pride, fear, anger, and a deep, bone-weary suspicion. "It's a joke," he said, his voice raspy. "A cruel joke from those boys in the office." "No, it's not, Papa," Seraphina said, her eyes wide as she traced the embossed lettering. "This is real. This is Mr. Finch's personal seal." "But why?" Elias asked, the question hanging heavy in the small room. "We don't belong there. They'll laugh at us." "Let them," Isabella said, her chin held high. She was the fire to Seraphina's water, her movements often sharper, more defiant. "This is an opportunity. Who cares what they think? We deserve to be in that room as much as any of them." The dilemma tore at Elias. He saw the mocking faces of the associates, heard their laughter. He imagined his beautiful, brilliant daughters, wilting under the condescending stares of the city's elite. He couldn't afford designer gowns or fancy shoes. They would be out of place, a spectacle for the wealthy. But then he saw the desperate hope in his daughters' eyes. For them, this wasn't just a party, it was a door, slightly ajar, into a world they had only ever dreamed of. The world of patrons, of artists, of stages grander than a scuffed community center floor. The world where they belonged. Word of the invitation spread through their tight-knit community like wildfire. Mrs. Rodriguez, the seamstress from down the block whose own daughter had once dreamed of being a singer, appeared at their door. "I have bolts of silk, donated years ago," she announced. "We will make them dresses fit for queens." The neighborhood barber offered to give Elias a proper shave and haircut. The owner of the corner bodega pressed a crisp $100 bill into his hand, saying, "For the taxi. You will arrive in style." In the week leading up to the gala, a different kind of energy filled their small apartment. By day, the hum of Mrs. Rodriguez's sewing machine was a constant presence. By night, Seraphina and Isabella danced with a renewed ferocity. They moved with a desperate, beautiful grace, their secret rehearsals a silent prayer. They were crafting a new story, one they would tell not with words, but with every arabesque and grand jeté. The night of the gala arrived, a swirl of cold November air and flashing camera bulbs. The Finch Tower lobby, which Elias usually saw empty and silent, was a river of diamonds and couture. As they stepped out of the taxi, a hush fell over the immediate crowd. The whispers were instantaneous. Who are they? Isn't that the janitor? Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt the familiar shame creeping up his neck. But then he felt two hands slip into his. Seraphina and Isabella stood on either side of him, their heads held high. In their simple, elegant gowns, one a deep sapphire, the other a shimmering pearl, they were breathtaking. They weren't just his daughters, they were his strength. Inside the grand ballroom, the opulence was staggering. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto tables laden with flowers and silver. The air buzzed with the conversations of the powerful. The young associates Elias had overheard were there, standing near the bar, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock and amusement. They raised their glasses in a mock toast. Elias ignored them, focusing on his daughters, who were taking in the scene with a mixture of awe and defiance. The evening progressed in a blur of polite applause for speeches and astronomical bids during the charity auction. Then came the moment everyone was waiting for, the patrons' dance. Tradition dictated that Mr. Finch, a man who hadn't been seen at his own gala in 5 years, would select a partner to open the dance floor. A hush fell as the orchestra readied itself. All eyes turned to the stage. A side door opened, and Alistair Finch emerged. He was older than Elias remembered, with a shock of white hair and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. He walked slowly, deliberately, past the tables of socialites and heiresses, past the wives of CEOs and politicians, all of whom held their breath in anticipation. He walked directly to the small, unassuming table in the corner. He stopped in front of Elias. The room held a collective gasp. The associates at the bar were grinning, certain their prank had reached its humiliating conclusion. But Finch didn't extend a hand to dance. He simply gave a small, respectful nod. Elias, he said, his voice quiet but carrying in the sudden silence. He then turned to the room. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your generosity tonight. The Finch Foundation was created to find and nurture the rarest of talents, to give a voice to those who have none, and a stage to those who have been relegated to the shadows. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd before landing on Seraphina and Isabella. A few weeks ago, I was leaving the office late one evening and I witnessed something extraordinary. In a small, forgotten park, under the dim glow of a single street lamp, I saw art in its purest form. I saw passion and pain and a talent so profound it stopped me in my tracks. He gestured to the stage. Tonight, I am not here to dance. I am here to be a patron. It is my distinct honor to introduce you to two of the most promising artists I have ever had the privilege to witness. Please welcome, Seraphina and Isabella Washington. A wave of confusion rippled through the audience. The associates' smiles faltered. Elias felt his knees go weak. His daughters, his babies, were being called to the stage. They looked at each other, a silent exchange of fear and resolve, then rose. As they walked to the center of the vast, empty dance floor, a few snickers could still be heard. They took their positions, back to back, under a single, stark spotlight. The music began, not the sweeping strings of a waltz, but a haunting, percussive melody, laced with a soulful cello. And then, they danced. It was nothing this audience had ever seen. It was not the polite, technical perfection of a conservatory-trained ballerina. This was something more. It was a story, raw and visceral, unfolding before their eyes. Their performance was a seamless blend of styles, the powerful contractions and releases of Graham technique, the lightning-fast footwork of tap, the soaring leaps of ballet, and the grounded, ancestral power of African dance. They moved as one entity, a perfect mirror of each other, yet each bringing her own unique emotion to the performance. Their dance told the story of their lives. The struggle, the hustle, the moments of despair, and the unquenchable fire of their shared dream. A series of sharp, staccato movements spoke of doors slammed shut. A fluid, lyrical section told of their mother's love. A breathtaking sequence of fouette turns, executed in perfect unison, was a whirlwind of defiance and hope. They ended with a powerful grand jeté, soaring across the stage before landing in a pose of quiet, unshakable strength. For a long moment, there was absolute silence. The kind of silence that is heavier and more profound than any sound. The audience was stunned, mouths agape. The mocking associates looked ashen-faced, their arrogance shattered. Elias stood by his table, tears streaming down his face, his heart fit to burst with a pride so fierce it was painful. Then, a single person began to clap. It was a renowned, notoriously harsh critic from the New York Times, a man Finch had personally invited. Then another joined, and another, until the entire ballroom erupted in a thunderous, roaring standing ovation that went on and on. In the aftermath of the performance, the twins were mobbed. Producers, choreographers, and critics, the true power brokers of the theater world, surrounded them, their business cards extended like offerings. Offers for auditions, for private lessons, for roles in upcoming productions, rained down upon them. They were no longer the janitor's daughters, they were the discovery of the decade. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Alistair Finch approached Elias. "Your daughters are a gift, Elias," he said softly. I don't know how to thank you, sir," Elias stammered. Finch waved a dismissive hand. "My late wife was a dancer," he confessed, his voice thick with memory. "She never made it to the big stage. She came from a poor family, and no one would give her a chance. I built this empire, but I couldn't buy her dream back. So, I created this foundation to find the ones who, like her, have the fire but not the opportunity. I saw that fire in your daughters. I saw my wife's spirit in them." The story of the janitor's twins became a New York legend. Their ascent was meteoric. They didn't just get a role, they took Broadway by storm. 3 years later, the Marquee of the Majestic Theater, one of Broadway's most hallowed stages, blazed with their names, Seraphina and Isabella. Their show, a revolutionary dance musical based on their own lives, was the hottest ticket in town, sold out for a year in advance. Elias, now retired, stood in the wings, watching them. He no longer smelled of ammonia, but of the faint, dusty scent of backstage and the expensive cologne he now wore. He managed their careers and, more importantly, their own foundation, which provided scholarships to young, underprivileged dancers from neighborhoods just like theirs. As the final number ended and the audience once again leaped to its feet in a deafening ovation, Seraphina and Isabella took their bows. They scanned the crowd, their eyes shining, and then, as they always did, they looked to the wings and found their father. They smiled, a shared, secret acknowledgement of the journey, of the struggle, and of the incredible, improbable dream they were now living. A dream born in a cramped Bronx apartment, polished in the gleaming halls of a skyscraper, and realized under the bright, unforgiving lights of Broadway. Thank you for watching our story. If you were moved, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible and inspiring stories. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.